Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, horror, I've got a few independently published horror books to talk about. So I've done a few of these Small Press Fridays videos before, and if you haven't seen one, so basically I talk about books I have been sent by either independently published authors, so self-published authors, or small presses. So talk about books I've had in, and also talk about any that I've read. So these books typically will get featured in other videos I do, so they might show up in book hauls or reading wrap-ups, things like that. But I like to give them a bit more of a focus in these occasional Friday videos as well, just to help out other small creators basically. Simple as that. So I've got two books I'm going to do kind of mini reviews of today, which I've read over the last couple of months, and a couple of new ones which have come in the last, well, both in the last week or so actually. So let me do those first. I've had two paperbacks come in from a writer called Robert Royal Poff, who contacted me over email. So the first one is this, Call to the Void, which is a horror short story collection, which sounds really interesting, and it's really nicely presented as well. I love the cover. Both the illustration and the design as well. I think they've done a very, very good job on that. So looking forward to digging into this. I think it's got about half a dozen stories in. I'm trying to remember. So yeah, a few horror short stories, which I think are slightly more towards the kind of extreme end of the horror spectrum, but definitely sounds very interesting. Robert also sent me a book of his poetry, so anyone who's watched the channel for any length of time will know or may have realised I'm not a huge poetry fan, but it's a slim volume, so I will give it a flick through and see if it tickles my fancy. This short story collection I'll definitely read. The poetry I'll give a quick glance to and see if I like it or not, but I'm not really a big poetry fan. But if you're watching, Robert, thank you very much for this. It does look fantastic, so looking forward to dipping into that. And then also picked up on Kindle Unlimited a book by a subscriber, LRJ Allen, called The Slumber Party Lake Massacre. Which looks fantastic. So lovely kind of 80s style cover. I haven't read it yet, but I've kind of flicked through the first few pages, and the kind of foreword from the author basically says this isn't trying to be clever, this isn't trying to be postmodern or anything like that. This is just a pure balls to the wall 80s slasher, which sounds perfect. So I'm very much looking forward to reading that one. So yeah, both Call to the Void and Summerside Lake Massacre I will report back on in future videos and let you know what I thought of them. So a couple of mini reviews next for a couple of books I've read over the last few months. So I have mentioned both of these in wrap-up videos and things, but the first one, which I read in May, is The Adversary by Patrick Harnish, which is a really beguiling and enjoyable blend of horror and western. There's loads going on in this book, and that was the thing I really liked about it. There's lots of different themes and styles woven together, and it works really, really well. So there's parts of it which kind of feel like true crime. There's parts of it which are supernatural horror, and there's parts of it which are western. And Harnish manages to blend all of those together into a whole, which is really satisfying. It does feel like, at times it does feel a little bit like a first book. I think there's a bit more polishing that could have been done to it, but that doesn't stop it being really, really enjoyable. So it's about a kind of serial killer roaming through the old west killing people, and the father of one of the of a family that he slaughtered is after him and joins up with this kind of bounty hunter called the Vaquero, who's this slightly mysterious gunfighter type figure. So they team up to go track this guy down and get him basically. But there's a whole load of supernatural stuff kind of going on around it as well. And it's just really, really entertaining. It's really gruesome at times, really gruesome. but there's a pace to it, and the characters are well drawn. There's some bits that were written like some kind of reports from a history book, which work really, really well. But yeah, it just moves at a pace. There's always something happening. There's lots of twists and turns. The central characters, so John Robinson, who's the main guy, and the Vaquero, are a fantastic double act. And there's also like a ghost character who helps them out as well. So there's all sorts of like interesting and imaginative stuff going on, and it all hangs together. It all hangs together very well as an enjoyable, quick, nasty read. So yeah, like that one very much indeed. So yeah, thank you again, Patrick, for sending that to me. The other one I was going to talk about is the Final Women by Pardeep Aujla. So this I read on Kindle. Again, like the Summerside Lake Massacre, this has got a great cover. I absolutely love this cover, and the book was really good as well. So it's a slasher about a kind of summer camp, like Camp Crystal in the Camp Crystal Lake in the Friday the 13th movies, where there have over the years been a number of massacres of unfortunate teens. Each one of those massacres has had a final girl, as you would expect, who has survived. And years later, those girls have grown up to be women, and the massacres, the killings have started again. The summer camp's being reopened, and bad shit's going down. So these women, who are all completely different from each other, team up in order to take down the killer. It's just really fun. It reminded me in some ways of Grady Hendrix's book, The Final Girl Support Group, other than the fact that I really liked The Final Women and I didn't like The Final Girl Support Group at all. So in The Final Girl Support Group, Hendrix takes final girls from different killers, all of whom are obviously based on movie franchises, and puts them together. And that for me it gave it a level of like you needed to suspend your disbelief to such a level that it just didn't work for me. I think what Pardeep Aujla has done in this book, where it's the same killer but there have been sequels, if you like, and there are final girls from each of those sequels and they get together, I think that makes a hell of a lot more sense. And the book just rattles on at a really good pace. So the opening is a fantastic, kind of pastiche of Friday the 13th style slasher movies. You've then got the kind of middle section, which is the three women teaming up. A lot of character-based stuff in that, but really, really well done. And you do get to know each of the women, and what drives them and things like that. So that worked very well, and it pulls a bit on that kind of classic trope of people who are who have the ability and the knowledge and the power to fight evil, being reluctant to do so because of the personal sacrifice, and then getting persuaded to take up the fight again. So you've got that going on, which is always a satisfying trope, I think. And then it builds up to a climax, which was completely not what I was expecting, but works really, really well. So some full-on horror in the final section, which was an absolute joy to read. So another really successful blend of a few different things that just worked beautifully as a kind of modern slasher novel that was smart but not trying to be clever, if that makes sense. I think one of the problems I have with the Grady Hendrix books is it all the way through it feels like it's trying to be really clever and it's kind of constantly winking at you, whereas The Final Women doesn't. It never feels like it's trying to be cleverer than it is. It's just a smart, enjoyable slasher book. So yes, I definitely recommend both The Adversary by Patrick Harnish and The Final Women by Pardeep Aujla. So thanks guys for sending me those books to read. Really enjoyed both, and looking forward to Summerside Lake Massacre and Call to the Void, and I will report back in future videos and let you know what those were like. Okay, it's time for me to pluck a random book from the shelves. Today I have The Snake by John Gotti, which I haven't read yet, but which looks really good. So John Gotti was the author of a book called The Taking of Pelham 123, which I have read, which was famously filmed, and the movie is really good as well. In fact, I think the movie was remade a few years back, so that's kind of a heist type book about some crooks who hijack a train. This, The Snake, is about an 11-foot black mamba that is loose in Central Park. That just sounds fantastic. I don't know why I haven't got around to reading this yet, because it sounds bloody brilliant. So yeah, very much looking forward to this. So do let me know if you've read this before, or read this yourselves. I don't know. Do let me know if you've read it, and what it's like. Also, let me know if you read the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. I read that probably 30 years ago, but remember it being really good. So yeah, looking forward to trying another book by the same author. So yeah, a bit of discussion there of a few independently published books. I do think that is a wonderful sector of the book market at the moment. I think that the availability of ebooks and print on demand has really made a huge positive change to publishing, and I love diving into some of these independently published books that wouldn't get picked up by big publishers, either because they're just too off the wall, or because they don't fit into the publisher's marketing plans of the kind of books they want to publish that season. So I think it's a fantastic place to find books that are different from the mainstream, and I delight in reading in reading independently published books, because there's so much great stuff out there. So yeah, do check it out yourselves if you haven't in the past. But yeah, as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of the books I've talked about. And let me know if you want me to read one of the two new ones that came in particular, and report back on that. But yeah, as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.